welcome back to True Crime and Crafting. So today we're going to be continuing our story from last time. So last time we learned about H.H. Holmes, and we left it off with thinking that maybe he might also be Jack the Ripper. So before we get into our true crime for today, I just wanted to please say please go in and like and subscribe and give me any comments, questions or anything like that. Please let me know how you feel about our episodes so far. We are gonna jump into our story, but just wanted to show you our cup from last time. This is from our H.H. Holmes video. It is completed. I just need to sand it down and put on one more coat of epoxy, and that cup will be ready to sell. So today we're going to be making a similar cup, but it will be for Jack the Ripper. So again, please like and subscribe and let me know what you think about our video today. So Jack the Ripper operated in Whitechapel, London from April the 3rd of 1888 to February the 13th of 1881. But not all of those murders are confirmed or felt that they were actually Jack the Ripper. So let's get into it. So Jack the Ripper's victims, he would slash their throats, he would disembowel them, he would take things out of their body and do we don't know what with them, and it would be he would mutilate their bodies, their genital areas, and it was just a very bloody scene from what I have read. He is mostly known for the Consonantial Five. So there was 5 murders. I'm pretty sure I'm not saying that right, but there were 5 murders that they assume that he did over like a 6-week span, and they fully contribute these 5 murders to Jack the Ripper. So the first one was Mary Ann Nichols. And she was found on Friday, August the 31st of 1888. One second. We have lost the lighter. We need the lighter. Sorry about that. So Mary Ann Nichols was found Friday, August the 31st of 1888 in Whitechapel. So her throat was slashed. Ooh. Her throat was slashed, and she had 2 deep cuts to her throat, one which went down to her vertebrae, and then she was stabbed twice in her genital area, and then her bowels were cut and coming out. So again, these are very bloody scenes from everything that I have read so far. We have to burn these, so I forgot. So then a week later was Annie Chapman. She was found Saturday, September the 8th of 1888. But she was found close to Whitechapel, but she was in Spitalfields. She had, again, 2 deep cuts to her throat, and parts of her insides were cut out and placed over the body or was missing. So he was cutting out their intestines, and he was looping them over their shoulders. So that was just something that he did to a couple of his victims. And then he was also ripping out their uterus, and the uterus wouldn't be found at the scene. So it was, again, a very bloody scene. So then Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Edwards was both killed on the same day. They were both killed on Sunday, September the 30th of 1888 in Whitechapel. So Stride had a 6-inch cut to her throat, only one, but it severed her carotid artery, but there were no injuries to her body. So when I was looking this one up, it's believed that she, her murder may have been interrupted. So, like he would have done the other mutilations to her body, but it sounds like he might have been interrupted while killing her and fled the scene. But that is also not proven. So for my friends that are watching this video, yes, I am playing with fire again. And then Edo's, her throat was also cut and her abdomen was ripped open. And her kidney and uterus was removed from her body, and her face was extremely disfigured. So again, he's removing body parts, and there are body parts from some of these scenes that were not found. So no one really knows what he was doing with the body parts. So then there was Mary Jane Kelly, and she was the only one that was found in her apartment. So these other murders, these women were found on the streets of Whitechapel, and that one got a little bit away from me. Their bodies were found on the streets of Whitechapel. So she's the only one that was found in an apartment. And she was probably the most gruesome of the scenes that are described that I have found. So from what I've read, her face was hacked beyond recognition. So he had chopped off her nose, cut up her cheeks, stabbed her cheeks, cut her eyes. Just her face was not recognizable. He had removed her organs and placed them in different spots all over the crime scene. So like she had body parts underneath her, she had body parts on her nightstand, and then there were also body parts missing from her inside. So she was one of the ones that I found that seemed to be the most gruesome. And this one also, so I found, so back then they didn't really have like a lot, pictures weren't like they are now back then, but when I was looking up stuff, I did find like a picture of the body of Mary Jane, and it looked like, I mean, you can't really tell a whole lot of what it is, but you can look it up on Google, and it does like censor it, and you can look at it, but it is pretty awful looking. And it, you know, I could not imagine back then finding something like that. But anyway, she's the only one that was found in her apartment. Well, these 5 are considered to be the only Jack the Ripper murders. There are other murders that happened in the same time frame that they think that Jack the Ripper also committed. So Rose Mylett was December the 20th of 1888, and she was strangled. So that's important. So she was strangled. She wasn't mutilated. She wasn't stabbed. She was strangled. Alice Mackenzie, July the 17th of 1988, and she had 2 stab wounds to her neck, but no mutilation. Then, this is where it started to kind of get interesting when I was researching this stuff. So on September 10th of 1889, there was an unknown woman's torso found in Whitechapel. So the legs and the arms were missing, and the torso had several cuts and stabs, and her lady parts had been, of course, stabbed and mutilated. Frances Coles, her throat was cut, but she was not mutilated. But they also feel that she is one of the ones that when the murderer was attempting to murder her, he got interrupted. So when she was found, she was alive, but she later died due to her stab wounds to her throat. I did find information on a few other women victims around this time frame, and they all were just their torsos were found. So they were missing arms and legs. There was one that the arms were later found buried like several feet away from where the torso was found. And so now you have Jack the Ripper operating in London, and then the papers came out, because it's in the same time frame, with who they call the torso killer, because now we went from, you know, stabbing and mutilating to taking their arms and legs off and just leaving torsos everywhere. Ooh. So, again, is it 2 killers? Is it 1 killer? So they contribute all of these to, like I said, the 5 women are known to be from Jack the Ripper. However, there are other victims, but they were killed in different manners, but kind of the same manner. And it was thought that all of these murders were being done by someone that had a medical background. I may have messed that up. May have went too far for that one. Trying to concentrate on this because I am burning this little piece. Oh, yep. See, okay, we're done with that. Okay, we're gonna have to fix that. The last suspected Ripper murder was Carrie Brown, though. So on April 24th of 1891 in New York City. So the murder stopped in London, and now they have a similar murder in New York City. She was cut in the groin, and her one ovary was pulled out. And from the scene, they did not know if it was, they didn't know if it was intentionally pulled out or if it just kind of fell out while he was slicing and dicing. So they do, but they do suspect that Jack the Ripper left London and came to America and killed her. So, as you can clearly tell, I'm having a little bit of problem with the fire here. So I'm going to try to get this done really quick, and we'll continue our story. Again, I just want to please ask you to like and subscribe. To my channel. I'm hoping to grow my channel and do a lot more true crime and crafting adventures with you guys. So please remember to like and subscribe. Leave me a comment. Let me know what you think about the series. We're attempting to put out something every week. But you guys help encourage me when I get likes, subscribes, comments. So that does keep me going. So back to the story. This is the last paper to burn, and then we're going to put all the stuff on the cup. Now that we've talked about Jack the Ripper, and we've kind of like went through a little bit of a timeline of when he was killing people. If you remember back to last week, H.H. Holmes was living in Chicago, and he had the murder house. And now we're thinking that Jack the Ripper is in New York. And so what ties them together? So although no one really truly knows who Jack the Ripper was, where's my bag? Nobody really knows who he was. However, H.H. Holmes, his great-great-grandson, Jeff Garrett, who came from H.H. Holmes' first wife, he is the one that is kind of put the suspected that H.H. Holmes could have been Jack the Ripper. He took it as far as when he found out that he could be a descendant, or that he was a descendant from H.H. Holmes, and he started really investigating H.H. Holmes' life and things like that. He's the one that started kind of trying to put clues together and thought that maybe H.H. Holmes really was Jack the Ripper. So Holmes and Ripper were operating at the same time. So if you go back to my last video, you can hear the timeline of H.H. Holmes. But let's just quickly kind of go over the timeline. So I'm going to read these really quick, and then we're going to glue onto our cup. Okay, so these are the Jack the Ripper murders, okay? So I want you to remember that these are in 1888, and Holmes was suspected of doing things before this, but when he was younger. So Jack the Ripper murders were August 31st of 1888, September the 8th, September the 29th, September the 30th, and November the 8th, all of 1888. Then, H.H. Holmes showed back up on the books, kind of around there, if that's what you want to call it. And his murders were April the 7th of 1891 and December of 1891, then December of 1892, July the 5th of 1893, November of 1893, and then June of 1894. And then the murder that got H.H. Holmes convicted, which was the Pitzel murders, and that's ultimately the murder that he was hung for. And then, so his last murders were July of 1894, September of 1894, and then October of 1894, and that was the Pritzer's children, was his last murders, but he was ultimately convicted of those murders, and was sentenced to death by hanging. So there's no overlap between the murders of H.H. Holmes and the Ripper, which is where it all kind of starts. There was only a 6-month gap between the murders in London and the murders that started happening from H.H. Holmes in Chicago. Now, H.H. Holmes was a known conman, and you know, again, no one really knows anything about Jack the Ripper. So a con man can be doing all kinds of things, like conning people into believing there's a whole nother killer somewhere. So, by the 1960s, though, you could get from New York to London during this time frame. In 1888, you could get from New York to London in anywhere from 8 to 15 days. So it is highly possible that Jack the Ripper is H.H. Holmes. So H.H. Holmes could have left from New York, went to London, came back from London, and came back to New York and made that final murder in New York, and then took off to Chicago, and that's where he started building his murder castle. Because, again, the last murder in London was November 8th of 1988 that they contribute to Jack the Ripper, because some of those other murders are contributed to the Torso Killer, and they also have like other nicknames for him as well. And then the first murder from H.H. Holmes was not until April 7th of 1891. So there was plenty of time for him to get back from London to New York and from New York to Chicago. So he had plenty of time. So what other evidence do we have to prove that potentially H.H. Holmes was Jack the Ripper? Okay, so a couple of things. So they really match up. And then the Jack the Ripper was suspected to have a medical background, which H.H. Holmes did. He actually went to school for medical. I mean, at least what it could be back then. And then H.H. Holmes, so back then, again, you know, I told you he was a lifetime criminal and did scamming and all of that stuff. So there's documentation of H.H. Holmes and his scammings, because he would scam the insurance company. So there is no documentation of where H.H. Holmes actually was between 1888 and 1889. So he's kind of like in limbo. No one really knows where he's at. So that gives him the opportunity to be in London committing murders. Then there's the Dear Boss letter. So we didn't talk about the Dear Boss letter, but the Dear Boss letter is a letter that was written during the time of Jack the Ripper murders in London. They were also called the Whitechapel murders. So the papers in London published this letter that was supposedly written by Jack the Ripper to the news, or to the newspapers, and it is suspected that that letter was actually written by an American and not a native person from London. So again, H.H. Holmes is an American, so could have been written by him. In 1888, there is a ship log that has the name H.H. or has H. Holmes on it. Now, Holmes was a popular name back then, so it could be a coincidence. But I don't know that I believe in coincidence like that, but it could have been a coincidence that it was someone else. But H. Holmes, or H. Holmes, was found on a shipping log in 1888. And then Holmes had a colleague that actually lived in Whitechapel, Edmund Buckley. So I didn't really read up a whole lot on him, but from what I can tell, he was also a career criminal. And you know, so there's no telling what Holmes would have been doing when he was going to see him. But he did have a connection in London. So could have been there to do that. So all of this is a great theory, right? It's a great theory. And that is what it is. It's a theory. I have one of my own. We're going to talk about that a little bit too. But Holmes, and here's the things that kind of like X out the theory. So Holmes and the Ripper, you know, they had different forms of killing. So H. Holmes was known, and he even stated that he would strangle his victims, and then, or he would listen to them suffocate when he was putting them in the gas chambered rooms that he had in his murder castle. So he got satisfaction out of hearing these people die, so which is very different from Jack the Ripper, because Jack the Ripper was known for it to just be real fast, quick, and in a hurry kill. Like, he didn't take his time killing his victims. So a matter of fact, he made it extremely gory. So that's extremely different from how H. Holmes was operating when he was doing his murders in Chicago. So like Ripper liked it fast and bloody, and H. Holmes did not. However, H. Holmes was reported to have set people on fire. He was reported to also still chop up some people. So torso killer. You know, if you're walking around London, so this is kind of still in that same time frame with those the torsos were turning up, no arms, no legs, and mutilated, but that could still be something that he was doing. H. Holmes, you know, he still had times where he was interested in strange things like the body parts and stuff like that, so still could have been him. Holmes also killed for money. So every time Holmes killed someone, it was for the insurance money. He was never killing just to kill. He was getting something out of it. One, I think it's because he enjoyed it. But two, I think it is known that he was killing these people for the insurance money. It had nothing to do with anything else but money. His killings were because of money, where Jack the Ripper's was meaningless. Now, all of his murders seem to have been prostitutes or women that, you know, lived on the low end of town. So I feel like that is another piece of that puzzle. But again, it kind of doesn't line up with how H. Holmes killings were. So kind of, you know, makes you think about it. And then again, the Dear Boss letter must have been from an American. So, or could have been from an American, is what people from London thought. So here's my theory. So I think that it's possible that Jack the Ripper and H. Holmes could have been the same people. I think that H. Holmes was a crazy person. If you read anything about him in depth, other than, you know, kind of other than what I tell you, like, he really was just, in my opinion, crazy. He, you know, was killing people for money, and they really think that he was up into the 200s of killing people. However, in his early years, you know, there was things that I read that he was very interested in autopsies. So when you do an autopsy, you are pretty much, you know, chopping up a body and looking on the insides and looking at the parts and pieces of the inside of the body. So he was extremely fascinated with that, and he took classes on autopsies. So I don't think that it is too far-fetched for us to believe that he could have went to London and committed those crimes. Now, his friend that lived in London was also known to be someone that did crime, right? So what if he was there and, you know, they were both doing crimes together? So now you have the Torso Killers and Jack the Ripper. You never know, because it could have been that. They could have been doing it together. Just a thought. I also think that, where am I going to put this on this cup? What if, you know, H.H. Holmes just couldn't control himself. Maybe he did go to London and see his friend, but when you are so used to, or you have this itch, like if you ever listen to like serial killer documentaries and stuff, they tell you like it's something that they have to do. Like it's, once they do it, they have to keep doing it. So maybe H.H. Holmes did leave and go see his buddy. You know, he was, at that time, he was running from the law in America anyway, because he had been linked to suspicious disappearances of individuals or deaths of individuals. So it's not like that he was being a saint over here. You know, so it's very well possible that he went over there to outrun the law from America and then was killing over there and then came back because he thought it would be safe. So that's my theory. You know, I think that it is highly possible because psychopaths are psychopaths. So I would love to know what you guys think. You know, so tell me in the comments, do you think H.H. Holmes could have been Jack the Ripper? I know we kind of went through both of these kind of quickly, but, you know, if you want to look anything up, I used Wikipedia. There is a ton of information on Jack the Ripper and H.H. Holmes, but I encourage you to kind of look it up. Tell me what you think. Tell me who you think in the comments was Jack the Ripper. Was it H.H. Holmes, or do you think it was someone else? And I will say this, though. Jack the Ripper wasn't considered the first serial killer, but I think that the fact that nobody knows who he is even more amazing. If you think about it, you killed all of these people and no one ever caught you. And now no one's ever going to know who it was. So even if we speculate or think, we can always speculate and think, but we're never going to know for real who Jack the Ripper really was. So tell me what you think in the comments. And again, please, please, please like and subscribe to my channel. It really does help encourage me to keep going, because I sometimes feel like no one is watching. But I'm sure that eventually someone's gonna come on and start spewing some comments and tell me how much fun they do have with me. And again, I know that this was a quick episode, but I hope that you come back for the next one and enjoy the rest of your weekend. I have one more piece to put on, so we're gonna put that on really quick, and then I'm gonna show you the cup. And while I'm doing that, just hit that like and subscribe button, maybe even put a comment in there just to say hello, and stick around on the channel for any updates, because we will be having a giveaway soon, because we reached over 50 subscribers. So now that we have 50 subscribers, we're supposed to be able to go live. That is still in the works. We're trying to figure that out. So just keep an eye open for the rules of being able to put your name in the drawing. Here is our Jack the Ripper cup. Not completely finished, but here it is. I'll probably add a couple of more things, put on a layer, and then I'll show you when it's all done. And you guys have fun with your true crime and crafting away from the channel, and I will see you guys next time.